I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Call me immediately. That was the text message glowing cold on my screen as I reached for my coat. No greeting, no context, just those 3 urgent words. I was headed out the door to dinner at Emma's place. She had called me earlier in the week. Just the 2 of us, Mom. We need to talk about the future. I thought she missed me. I thought, finally, my daughter was reaching out, instead of leaving. I sank down onto the hallway bench and called my attorney, James Harris. He answered before the first ring completed. Sarah, his voice was grave. No small talk. Emma filed a petition this morning. She's seeking legal control over you and the company. She's claiming you're mentally incompetent. The cashmere coat slipped from my fingers, pooling at my feet like spilled ink. I couldn't speak as James continued. She submitted statements, witness affidavits, testimonials from colleagues. She's going after everything your decision-making authority, your finances, the company. I tried to find my voice. On what grounds? She's filed for emergency conservatorship, James said. Claims you're already compromised, showing signs of cognitive decline, making erratic business decisions. The words dropped like matches on dry wood. Emma wasn't just challenging me. She was trying to erase me. I sat motionless, breath shallow, as the truth crystallized. The dinner invitation, the soft voice on the phone, the let's talk about the future. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a setup. She'd planned every move behind my back while my name was still on the door of the company I'd built from nothing. I gave her everything. Now she wanted the rest. Not later, not gradually now. Fast, quiet, permanent. What Emma never bothered to ask, what she never saw coming. I'm not done yet. If she wanted a war, she just got one. 3 days earlier, Emma had called me as if nothing was wrong. Her voice had that practiced warmth that I now realized should have been my first warning. Mom, she'd said sweetly, you've been working too hard lately. Come over for dinner Friday. Just us. Let's talk about the future. She'd said the future like it was something we would dream up together, as if I wasn't still showing up at the office before everyone else 5 days a week, as if I hadn't kept Lewis Enterprises alive through 3 recessions, 5 mergers, and a pandemic she barely experienced except through Zoom calls from her lakeside retreat. But I didn't hear any of that then. I just heard my daughter's voice sounding warm for the first time in months. I told myself maybe we'd turned a corner. Maybe she finally saw me again, not as some figurehead to be managed, but as her mother. I let that hope in. I even stopped at Baxter's Bakery on the way home that day and pre-ordered her favorite lemon tarts for our dinner. It was the little bakery near her old elementary school where I used to take her for special treats after school concerts and parent-teacher conferences. A detail I never stopped remembering, even when she seemed to have forgotten so much. That call had felt like a patch carefully sewn into something torn. But now I knew better. It wasn't a patch. It was a pressure point, and I'd walked right into it. I sat in my kitchen that night with the dinner invitation echoing in my mind. Her voice had been too calm, too measured. Now that I looked back, there had been no genuine warmth in it, just carefully chosen words designed to disarm me. We should talk about the future. What she meant was her future, without me in the way. And I, the fool, had thanked her for inviting me. I made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea. I never drank alcohol, not even now. I just held the steaming cup, letting the heat seep into my fingers while James's words echoed in my head. Emergency conservatorship already filed. She's coming after everything. That was when the shift happened inside me. Not loud, not violent, just final. I realized I'd been imagining a daughter who no longer existed. The Emma I raised would have protected me. She would have fought for me. But the woman on the other end of that phone was something else now, something polished and cold. I needed to face that reality. I set the cup down and stared at the bakery box with the lemon tarts I'd picked up that afternoon. They were never meant for a loving reunion. They were meant to soften me for execution. Looking back, I can't believe how long I ignored the warning signs. Emma had been preparing the ground for months, maybe longer. At first, it was subtle, interrupting me during executive meetings, finishing my sentences as if I couldn't complete my own thoughts, rolling her eyes when I pressed for details on marketing data or questioned overly optimistic projections. She used to take detailed notes when I spoke. Lately, she just stared at her phone, and when I challenged her when I disagreed with her hasty hiring plans or cautioned against overpromising to investors, she'd laugh it off with a practiced smile. "You're overthinking again, Mom." She always called me Mom in front of the staff, but not with affection, with ownership, like I was a quaint relic she could afford to humiliate. I told myself it was generational, that this was how modern daughters established independence, by distancing themselves from their mothers in professional settings. But it wasn't just dismissive tones or subtle undermining. She started planting seeds in everyday conversation. "Maybe it's time you took longer vacations, Mom." The team gets confused when you change direction mid-project. It might help morale if we put a fresh face at the helm for the next funding round. I thought she was just venting frustrations. I thought we were still fundamentally on the same side. But behind my back, she was whispering to staff that I was becoming forgetful, erratic, increasingly out of touch. My executive assistant, Diane, finally told me in confidence that Emma had been joking in the break room about me wandering off into early retirement. The younger staff all laughed. I guess I did too. When I first heard about it, that's how they get you. They erode your authority with humor. They dress disrespect up as concern, wrap cruelty in jokes. And I, so desperate to maintain some semblance of closeness with my only child, I let her. I kept showing up to meetings where my presence was clearly unwelcome. I kept inviting her to dinners that ended in long, uncomfortable silences. I kept hoping we'd find our way back to the partnership we once had. But Emma didn't want a partner. She wanted the throne. And when James told me about the conservatorship petition, when he explained that she'd signed legal documents claiming I was mentally unfit to lead, everything suddenly made sense. The subtle eye rolls, the backhanded compliments, the carefully calibrated undermining, the quiet campaign to make me look unstable. She'd been methodically preparing this coup for a long time. What Emma didn't know was that I'd been preparing too, not out of paranoia or suspicion, but out of habit. I've run a business for over 3 decades. People lie. People fail. People crack when money or status is on the line. But numbers, records, paper trails, they don't. For years, I kept everything. I documented everything. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I've learned that people eventually disappoint you. It's just good business to be prepared. Every board meeting, every executive change, every signed client contract, I preserved it all. More importantly, I kept proof that I was still sharp, still effective, still the right person to lead. Regular medical evaluations, detailed personal journals tracking my decisions and their outcomes, letters from longtime clients thanking me by name for my strategic guidance, all filed, all dated, all organized in a leather portfolio tucked deep in my desk drawer, labeled Succession Contingency, 2 versions, one with Emma, one without. I created it after the first time she casually mentioned helping me transition into retirement. She'd said it with a smile, but her tone carried the chill of finality. That was when my instincts first warned me to prepare for a day I hoped would never come. I had also preserved copies of all the little things Emma never thought I'd notice. Expense reports with names mysteriously redacted, emails where she contradicted my directives to staff, meeting minutes where she subtly edited my decisions after the fact. Small things on their own, but together, they formed an unmistakable pattern. I never went to that dinner. Instead, I drove straight to James's office. Same brick building with the green awning. Same second-floor corner unit he'd occupied for 2 decades. I was there when he unlocked the door. The sky outside still dark. He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew better. Instead, he slid the petition across his desk. My name printed in bold under a heading I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, Petition for Adult Conservatorship. Emma's signature sat at the bottom, elegant and deliberate, like a knife wound. "She's serious," he said, watching my face carefully. "She's stupid," I replied. James's lips twitched slightly. Both can be true. He sat back in his chair, folding his hands over his stomach, His eyes were sharp, assessing. She has investors backing her. 2 of them contacted me privately last week. They think she represents the future of Lewis Enterprises. And I'm the past, I said flatly. They're not saying that out loud, he replied, but they're treating you like a sentimental liability, like you're someone who might cling to outdated methods and let emotion cloud your judgment. That word again, emotion. As if building a company with heart was a weakness rather than the very thing that had sustained us through the hardest times. They don't know the numbers, I said, my voice hardening. James leaned forward, his expression shifting to something more focused, almost predatory. Then that's how we beat this. Not with speeches, not with tears, with numbers, financials, records, your medical evaluations, hard evidence that can't be dismissed. I nodded. He flipped open a legal pad and started making notes with the methodical precision of someone preparing for a major acquisition. Step 1, he said. We file a motion to contest fast before she tries to freeze your access to company accounts. She can't do that, I said. Everything is in my name. She doesn't have voting control. She's hoping to get it by proving you're mentally unfit. Then we prove I'm not. James smiled, not warm, not friendly, but strategic. She's underestimating you. That's good. She's counting on me to be quiet, I said as he said, my resolve hardening with each passing moment. That's over. I handed him a flash drive containing copies of my contingency plan, financial records, emails, everything I'd been collecting. Emma thought she had deleted a PDF of my comprehensive medical exam from 6 months ago, but I had backup copies of everything. James plugged in the drive without comment, reviewed the contents, and nodded with grudging admiration. You've been waiting for this. No, I said quietly. I was hoping it would never come. But you're ready. I was. Because suddenly this wasn't about being right or respected. It was about taking back what was mine. Piece by piece, line by line, signature by signature. My company, my legacy, my identity. By the time I left James's office, I had exactly what I needed: a reason, a direction, a mission. This wasn't about pride anymore. It wasn't even about the company. Not entirely. It was about refusing to let the people closest to me rewrite who I was just because it suited their ambitions. Emma thought I was finished. She'd made her move against me as if I were a problem to be quietly managed, like a senile relative who needed to be guided away from the Thanksgiving carving knife. But I wasn't some fragile widow who'd lost her grip on reality. I wasn't confused or clinging to power out of fear or ego. I was lucid and furious. She had tried to remove me like a mere formality: file the petition, smile through dinner, inherit the crown before I even considered stepping down from the throne. What she never expected was resistance. My goal was clear: prove I am fit legally, medically, and financially. Show the board who Emma really is. Expose her power grab for what it truly is: greed wrapped in artificial concern. Take her mask off publicly, because she hadn't just insulted me. She had tried to erase me, and she did it quietly, methodically, the way cowards always operate. She wanted the applause for rescuing the company from its aging founder while pocketing every benefit of my life's work. She wanted the empire without the blood on her hands. But now there would be light courtrooms, depositions, evidence, shareholders watching. I wasn't going to let this play out in whispers and rumors. I was going to drag every lie into the daylight and let Emma burn in the exposure. This wasn't revenge. This was self-preservation. I didn't tell anyone else what was happening yet. Not the staff, not the board, not my friends. Not until I had everything prepared. Let Emma think I was still stunned and reeling. Let her think I'd meekly show up to dinner confused and hurt. Let her keep underestimating me. It would make my next moves more effective. But inside, I was transforming from prey to predator, from mother to opponent. The first breakthrough came from the most unexpected place: a junior accountant named Noah Parker. Quiet, polite, barely out of graduate school. The kind of employee Emma never noticed unless she needed coffee or copies made. He stopped me outside the elevator on Thursday afternoon, eyes downcast, voice barely above a whisper. "Ms. Lewis, I think you should see something." My pulse quickened. You can speak freely. He handed me a folded printout, glancing nervously toward the stairwell before making a quick exit like someone who couldn't risk being seen talking to me. I waited until I returned to my office to examine the document. It was an internal email from Emma sent 2 weeks earlier. Subject line: pre-transition support. Body text: when the time comes, I expect full alignment from the team. Bonuses will be distributed accordingly once I assume interim control. I read it twice, my hands growing steadier with each word. When the time comes, not if when, and interim control, as if she'd already penciled in my professional obituary and was preparing her press release. She'd sent it to 6 staff members, 3 department heads, 2 senior advisors, and Noah Parker. She had been planning to buy their loyalty, and clearly, not everyone was for sale. I read the email again and felt a familiar heat return, not blind rage, but focused precision. Like the moment you discover the exact weakness in an opponent's strategy. Emma was making promises, financial promises, transactional promises. There was nothing about concern for my well-being or love for the company we'd built together, just bonuses and control. If I could prove she was leveraging company resources to stage this takeover, even hint at it, she wouldn't just look ruthless. She would look fraudulent, manipulative, unethical. And the board would have to listen. Noah had no idea what he'd just given me. Or maybe he did. Maybe he recognized what Emma was becoming and didn't want to be part of it. Either way, I had my first solid piece of evidence, and I wasn't letting go of this thread. She wanted loyalty through bribery. I would win through evidence. Let her buy silence. I only needed one voice speaking truth. I didn't flinch. I got to work. Emma wanted to paint me as unstable, emotional, outdated, the kind of woman who runs a company with sentiment instead of skill. So, I shut the door to my office, muted my phone, and did the one thing she never imagined I still could. I proved I was better at her own game than she was. I pulled up the last 5 years of quarterly reports. I extracted profit margins, growth rates, client acquisition data. I made copies of our 3 biggest expansion deals, all executed under my direction. Emma had smiled for the photographs at the ribbon cuttings. I had negotiated every clause of those contracts. I created a file labeled Operations under CEO Tenure, then another Client Retention Statistics, another Leadership Performance Reviews. Every report included source data, no emotional appeals, no anecdotes, just mathematics. Cold, hard proof that under my leadership, Lewis Enterprises hadn't just survived, it had thrived. She wanted to claim I was too sentimental. I would counter with efficiency ratios and double-digit client retention statistics. I wasn't just competent. I was outperforming half the CEOs in my sector, including the young, dynamic ones investors love to throw money at before watching them burn out within 2 years. Emma didn't understand longevity. She mistook it for obsolescence. That's what happens when you inherit proximity to power instead of building it yourself. You start to think it belongs to you by right. By nightfall, my office resembled a war room: charts, reports, graphs with year-over-year data pinned in neat rows on the walls. No desperate attempts to be heard. Just evidence. Cold, clean, factual. I even found a recording of the keynote address I delivered at last year's Leadership Summit, 40 minutes speaking without notes, earning a standing ovation from industry leaders. Emma had commented afterward. It was nice, Mom, a little sentimental, but nice. I watched the recording again with fresh eyes. I didn't see sentimentality. I saw precision and vision. By midnight, I had assembled a comprehensive binder of evidence. I labeled it simply Exhibit A. It would be the first of many. Emma showed up at my office the next morning without warning. Didn't call. Didn't schedule. Just walked in as if the space already belonged to her. Mom, she said with that politician's smile she had perfected for board meetings and charity galas. We should talk. I closed the binder on my desk without flinching. She took the seat across from me, not the one for visitors, but the one I reserved for partners. Equals. Her choice of seat told me everything I needed to know about her mindset. I wanted to say this face to face, she began, voice measured and controlled. No lawyers, no drama. Too late for that. I know you're upset, she continued, her tone calm, almost maternal, as if our roles had reversed. But this doesn't have to become ugly. I remained silent, studying her. She leaned forward, all practiced warmth and manufactured empathy. You've done an incredible job building this company, but at some point, we all have to let go before people start asking hard questions. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. She folded her hands delicately on the edge of my desk. It'll be easier if you step aside voluntarily. You're offering mercy, I said flatly. She smiled. I'm offering dignity. I leaned back in my chair, truly seeing her for perhaps the first time. I noticed the way her confidence sat on her like expensive armor, the way she assumed this was a negotiation rather than a declaration of war, a critical mistake. You filed a legal petition behind my back, I sassy said, voice steady and controlled. You told a court of law that I'm mentally unfit to lead my own company. Her smile didn't waver. That was a procedural formality. And the bonuses you promised to staff if they supported you. That caught her off guard. A momentary flicker crossed her face, barely visible, but unmistakable to a mother who had studied that face for 37 years. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied smoothly. Don't lie. Not here. Not to me. Her mouth tightened slightly. I'm doing what's best for the company. No, I said, rising slowly from my chair. You're doing what's best for your image. You want the narrative of the brilliant daughter who rescued her mother's legacy. You want control without earning it. You want the crown. Emma. She stood too, taller than me but suddenly less certain. You won't win this, she said, voice quiet but sharp. You're tired. You're slipping. People are already talking. Let them talk, I replied evenly. I have the receipts, all of them. She left without another word, but I had seen it the first flash of genuine uncertainty in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't completely confident in her plan. And that uncertainty was the first crack in her carefully constructed campaign. She thought I'd be too rattled to fight back effectively. But the moment she walked out of my office, I opened a folder labeled Unreviewed Transactions that I'd been keeping for months. Not out of suspicion, but because Emma had grown increasingly careless with financial documentation. And now I had reason to examine everything closely. I pulled the financial records' first month-by-month breakdowns of executive reimbursements, expense allocations, and consulting contracts. One payment immediately caught my attention, $12,000 labeled Strategic Advisory to a company I'd never heard of. I researched it immediately. The firm had been registered only 3 months earlier. The sole officer listed was a former classmate of Emma's from business school. No deliverables had been submitted. No reports had been filed to justify the payment. Another $8,500 had gone to a marketing consultant with no invoice, no meeting notes, no tangible work product. That consultant, I discovered through a quick social media search, was currently traveling through Europe, posting pictures from luxury resorts with captions about chasing dreams with investor backing. Emma had been funneling money bit by bit, individual amounts small enough to avoid triggering alarms, but collectively substantial. I dug deeper. Human Resources had flagged a pattern of payroll adjustments tied to non-existent performance bonuses. Emma had quietly increased her own executive compensation by 10% under a title that didn't exist until she created it. Then came statements from staff members. 3 of them emailed me confidentially after Noah's warning spread quietly through the office. Emma had told them she would make it worth their while if they supported her during a leadership transition. Some reported feeling pressured. One described it as a loyalty test. All of it documented. Now I had concrete evidence, not rumors, not speculation receipts, bank statements, email chains, expense reports. And most damning of all, a draft memo she had written but never sent. Discovered on a shared network drive leadership transition proposal interim CEO Emma Lewis. Dated 3 days before she invited me to dinner, she had already written her acceptance speech before the ambush was even launched. I compiled everything into a single comprehensive folder, labeled it Emma Financial Misconduct, and sent it to James with a terse note. We're past rumors now. Time to bury her with truth. Because this wasn't just about mental competence anymore. It was about fraud. And I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. James called me the next morning. No greeting, no preamble. Sarah, he said. You need to sit down. I'm standing, I replied. Then brace yourself. He had obtained the corporate card statements. I hadn't yet reviewed the legal expense allocations. Emma had buried the invoices within general administrative expenses, hidden under deliberately vague line items. But the truth was now clear. She wasn't just paying lawyers. She was using company money to finance her case against me. The legal fees she had submitted as consulting services were actually payments to the law firm handling her conservatorship petition. She had charged our company, my company, for the privilege of trying to declare me incompetent. She's using your own profits to wipe you out, James said flatly. My breath caught, not from shock or heartbreak, but from something colder and more focused. I studied the numbers on the page before me. 20,400 in legal fees drawn in 4 separate transfers, all coded under legitimate business services, all approved by Emma herself. I'll get you the originals, James added. The bank can confirm exactly where the money went. I was quiet for a long moment. She thought I'd never discover this. No, James corrected me. She thought you'd be removed before it mattered. That was the moment something inside me turned to steel. This wasn't about power anymore. This was theft, malicious, strategic, arrogant. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me to fund her victory parade. I hung up and walked to the window, staring out at the parking lot, the same lot where I used to sit 25 years ago, watching Emma run to my car after ballet class, her blonde hair flying behind her like a banner. That little girl was long gone. She had been replaced by someone who saw my life's work as merely a stepping stone and me as an obstacle to be removed. Someone who didn't just stab, she smiled while twisting the knife, using my own money to do it. I turned back to my desk and pulled out the folder labeled Court Preparation. I added the bank statements, highlighted every suspect payment, labeled each with dates, vendor names, and invoice discrepancies. Then I opened a fresh document on my computer and titled it Petitioner's Financial Conflict of Interest. This wasn't just a defense anymore. This was a counterattack, because now I wasn't fighting merely to prove I was still capable. I was fighting to prove Emma was unfit for the position she so desperately coveted. That night I didn't work. I sat in my living room with the lights off, a glass of whiskey in my hand, staring at the portrait over the fireplace. Robert, my husband, gone 10 years this fall. He used to say Emma had my fire. I think he meant it as a compliment. Maybe it was back then. She was tenacious, competitive, a little ruthless on the soccer field, but never cruel. She cried when she lost. She used to bring home awards and tell me, I wanted to win for you. Now she was trying to erase me legally, financially, publicly. She didn't want to win for me anymore. She wanted to win instead of me. And I couldn't stop asking myself one thing. How did I raise someone who could do this? I had sacrificed so much to build her world. Stayed late at the office to pay for private school. Missed promotions early in my career to make room for sick days and science fairs. Gave her a seat at the table she didn't have to earn, just so she'd have a head start. And she used that head start to plan my funeral while I was still breathing. The fire she inherited wasn't a gift anymore. It was a weapon, and I helped sharpen it. That was the hardest part. Not the betrayal, not the legal fight, not the money. The truth that I had spent years choosing grace over confrontation, peace over power, silence over anger, and it had turned me into prey. I had taught her how to walk through doors I kicked open, and now she thought she could shut them on me. I took another sip of whiskey, felt it burn straight through the numbness. The woman I used to be, the nurturing one, the one who tried to lead with heart. She died in that chair right there with Robert's face staring down from the wall. I wasn't sad. Not anymore. I was stripped clean. And what was left was someone Emma hadn't met yet. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls. One to James, one to the courthouse, and one to the board secretary. The hearing date was set. Conservatorship petition versus Sarah Lewis. 2 weeks from today. I told James I didn't want it quiet. I want it public, I said. Board members, senior staff, investors. I want every single one of them in that courtroom. You're sure I'm done hiding? He didn't argue, just said, then we'll give her a show. I drafted the invitation myself. Formal, brief, impossible to ignore. As you may be aware, a conservatorship petition has been filed challenging my ability to lead this company. In the interest of transparency and integrity, I invite you to attend the court hearing. The documents, evidence, and testimony presented will speak louder than rumor ever could. I welcome your presence. I sent it directly to the board. CC'd every department head. Emma's name was listed third. By noon, my inbox buzzed with quiet replies. Thank you for including us. I will be there. You have my support. Not all of them. Not yet, but enough to matter. I could feel the shift. Quiet at first, like the way air changes before a storm. Emma had wanted a whisper campaign, a slow erosion of trust. I gave her a stage instead. Let her explain to a room full of shareholders why she accused her mother of incompetence. Let her try to cry her way out of forged invoices and company-funded lawsuits. She wanted control. Let's see how she handled scrutiny. I ordered binders, black leather, gold embossed with the company logo, each one filled with the same contents, growth metrics, medical documentation, audit trails, staff emails, one for every seat in the gallery. Let them flip through page after page while she spins her little narrative. Let them see exactly who's been building this company and who's been bleeding it dry. No more silence. No more dignity for the sake of appearances. If she wanted to throw me to the wolves, then I'd teach her what happens when the wolves find out I'm not the meal. I'm the fire. While I was preparing for battle, Marcus Reed, my CFO, knocked on my door. I'd known Marcus for 15 years. He was quiet, meticulous, and unfailingly honest, the kind of man who checks numbers 3 times before he presents them. Got a minute? He asked, his voice lower than usual. I nodded, gesturing to the chair across from me. He closed the door behind him, took a seat, and placed a folder on my desk. His hands were trembling slightly. Emma asked me to sign off on some projected financials for the board, he said. I thought you should see them. I opened the folder. Inside were growth projections for the next fiscal year. Not the ones we'd approved in our last executive meeting, but a completely revised version. The new numbers painted a picture of a company on the decline. Margins shrinking, client acquisition stagnating, investment returns plummeting. These aren't our projections, I said. Marcus shook his head. No, she created these herself. Said they were more realistic and that you'd been overly optimistic. He leaned forward, lowering his voice further. She wanted me to present them at the next board meeting as our official outlook. Without consulting me, yes. When I pushed back, she said. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Go on, I urged. She said you wouldn't understand the numbers anyway, and it was better if I handled it directly with her from now on. The coldness in my chest spread. I'd thought I couldn't be more stunned by her betrayal. But here was another layer. She wasn't just trying to remove me. She was actively sabotaging the company's image to justify it. Did you sign off on this? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Of course not. His eyes met mine, offended at the very suggestion. I've worked with you for 15 years. Sarah, I know fabricated numbers when I see them. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved by his loyalty. There's more, he said, pulling another document from his briefcase. She's been meeting with Westlake Partners. My stomach dropped. Westlake Partners was a private equity firm known for aggressive acquisitions and asset stripping. They'd approached us 2 years ago with an offer I'd firmly declined. Went 3 times in the last month, off-site. Nothing in the calendar. He pushed the paper toward me, security badge logs showing Emma entering and exiting the Westlake building. I thought you should know who you're dealing with, Marcus said quietly. She's not just after your job. I think she's trying to position herself to sell the company once you're out. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The conservatorship, the fabricated financial outlook, the secret meetings. It wasn't just ambition. It was a coordinated plan to devalue the company, push me out, then sell it off for personal profit. Marcus, I said, gathering the documents, would you be willing to put this in writing for James and possibly testify if needed? He didn't hesitate, already drafted a statement. It's in the back of the folder. I smiled. My first genuine smile in days. I've always appreciated your thoroughness. After he left, I called Noah Parker to my office. The young accountant arrived looking nervous, fidgeting with his tie. Please, sit, I said. You're not in trouble. He relaxed slightly, though his eyes still darted to the door as if expecting Emma to burst in. Noah, I want to thank you for bringing that email to my attention, I began. It was brave, he shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. It didn't seem right, what she was doing. No, it wasn't. I paused, studying him. How long have you been with us? 2 years next month. You hired me right out of school when no one else would take a chance. I had a gap year on my resume that most firms wouldn't overlook. I remembered now, the bright but anxious graduate who'd taken time off to care for his mother during her cancer treatment. Emma had wanted to pass on him. I'd insisted on giving him a shot. I need someone I can trust in accounting, I said. Someone who knows the numbers but also understands ethics. Would you be willing to help compile a more comprehensive record of Emma's financial activities? His posture straightened, a sense of purpose replacing the anxiety. I already started. After I gave you that email, I pulled everything I could find. Expense reports, reimbursement requests, vendor payments, anything with her approval on it. And there's a pattern, small amounts mostly, spread across different budget lines. But it adds up. Over $40,000 in the last 6 months to entities that don't seem to provide any actual service to the company. I nodded. Can you document all of it with dates, authorization codes, everything? I'll have it for you by morning, he said with quiet determination. Every penny. As he stood to leave, I had one more question. Noah, why did you do it? Why come to me? You must have known the risk if she found out. He paused at the door, his expression somber. My mom always said you can tell everything about a person by how they treat people they don't need. He met my eyes directly for the first time. Emma treats people like they're disposable. You never did. After he left, I sat there absorbing his words. The contrast he'd drawn was stark, but it hit home. I'd built this company on relationships, with clients, with employees, with partners. Emma saw it as a vehicle for her ambition, the people within it merely tools. That evening, James called with the final piece of the puzzle. Sarah, we've got her, he said, his voice charged with restrained excitement. I followed the money trail from those legal payments. The firm she hired specializes in corporate takeovers, not family law or conservatorships. And guess who else they represent? Westlake Partners, I said, the pieces falling into place. Exactly. They're the same firm that structured 3 of Westlake's recent acquisitions. Emma isn't just trying to take control of Lewis Enterprises. She's setting up a sale. Any idea what the terms might be? My source says Westlake's standard playbook is to keep the founder's face for PR, strip the assets, and flip what's left within 2 years. They typically offer the facilitator, in this case, Emma, a position with their firm and a percentage of the profits from the sale. I closed my eyes, imagining my company dismantled, my employees scattered, my life's work reduced to parts and profits. And Emma, rewarded for the destruction. James, we need to move faster. Can we get the hearing moved up? Already working on it. I filed an emergency motion citing new evidence of financial impropriety. We should hear back by morning. Good. I took a deep breath. And James, I want to talk to Emma before this goes any further. One last chance. Sarah, his tone was cautious. Legally speaking, that's not advisable. I know, but I need to do this, not as CEO to COO, but as mother to daughter. I need to look her in the eye and hear her say it. He sighed. If you must, but don't go alone, and don't say anything that could be used against you. Remember, everything's admissible now. I'll remember. I hung up, knowing what I had to do. The next day, I asked my assistant to schedule a meeting with Emma, formal, in the conference room, with Michael Chen, our legal counsel, present. She arrived 5 minutes late, deliberately casual in a way that said she didn't consider this important. Mom, she said, dropping into a chair. Is all this really necessary? Michael looks like he's preparing for a deposition. She smiled at him. That practiced charm I'd seen her deploy 1,000 times. Michael didn't smile back. He placed a recorder on the table. Ms. Lewis, I'm here in my capacity as corporate counsel. This meeting will be recorded for the protection of all parties. Her smile faltered. What is this? A chance to explain yourself, I said quietly. Before things go any further, she leaned back, crossing her arms. I've filed the petition. My lawyers are handling it. There's nothing to discuss. Emma, I know about Westlake Partners. A flicker in her eyes, surprise quickly masked. I don't know what you're talking about. 3 meetings in the past month. Same firm representing both you and them. Fabricated financial projections. It's all documented. She studied me, calculating. Then her demeanor shifted, the pretense falling away. So what if I've met with them? It's called planning for the future. Someone has to. By selling the company I built, that was your plan all along, wasn't it? Get me declared incompetent, take control, then sell everything to the highest bidder. Don't be dramatic. Her voice turned cold. I'm doing what you never had the courage to do. This company has plateaued under your leadership. You're too attached, too sentimental. Westlake sees the potential I do, what this company could be without your outdated methods holding it back. And what do you get out of it? A corner office at Westlake. A commission. She didn't deny it. A future. Recognition for my vision instead of always being Sarah Lewis's daughter. The truth of it hung in the air between us. Stark, painful, irreversible. She didn't just want my company. She wanted to erase my legacy entirely. And what about our employees, I asked. The people who've given years to building this place. She shrugged. Business evolves. People adapt or they don't. Like I should adapt to being pushed aside, declared mentally incompetent so you can cash in. You had your time, she said. And for the first time, I heard real emotion in her voice. Resentment. Deep and festering. 30 years running things your way. I've spent my entire career in your shadow, following your rules, hearing how brilliant Sarah Lewis is while I wait for scraps of recognition. I gave you everything, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. A place at the table. Training. Opportunities most people would kill for. You gave me a place in your kingdom, she snapped. But never the crown. Never real power. Just enough to keep me hoping, waiting for you to finally step aside. Well, I'm done waiting. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly disturbed by the raw emotion unfolding before him. I almost forgot he was there. Emma, I said, trying one last time. It doesn't have to be this way. We could work together, plan a real transition. But what you're doing, it will destroy everything, including whatever is left between us. For a moment, just a flicker, I thought I saw uncertainty in her eyes. Then it hardened into resolve. There's nothing left between us except business. Mom, and business is business. May the best woman win. She stood, gathered her things, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back. By the way, you should really update your passwords. It's bad security to use the same one for everything. The smirk that followed told me exactly how she'd accessed so many of my files. After she left, Michael switched off the recorder, his face grim. Sarah, I've been corporate counsel for 15 years, and I've never... He shook his head. This is beyond a professional dispute. What do you want me to do with this recording? Send it to James, I says, and Michael, I'll need you at the hearing. I wouldn't miss it, he replied, a determination in his voice that told me I had another ally. The confrontation with Emma left me hollow, but also strangely liberated. The last thread of hope, that there was some misunderstanding, that my daughter hadn't really betrayed me so completely, had been severed. Now there was only the fight ahead, and I could face it clear-eyed, without the burden of false hope. James called that evening with news. The judge granted our motion. Hearings moved up to Monday. 3 days. That's good, I said. The sooner the better. There's more, he continued. Emma filed an emergency motion of her own today, trying to freeze your access to company accounts pending the hearing outcome. My pulse quickened. Did she succeed? No. The judge denied it based on the financial evidence we submitted. But Sarah, she's getting desperate. That means dangerous. I know. She told me as much today. Said business is business. And may the best woman win. James was silent for a moment. You know, in all my years practicing law, I've never understood how family can turn on family like this. Over money. Over power. It never makes sense to me. It's not just about money for Emma, I said, realizing it as I spoke. It's about identity. She wants to erase mine to create her own. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered through my house, the house where I'd raised Emma, where Robert and I had built our life together. Every room held memories, some sweet, some painful. In Emma's old bedroom, preserved like a museum piece, though she'd moved out 15 years ago, I sat on the edge of her bed and looked at the walls covered with ribbons, certificates, family photos. There we were at her high school graduation, Emma beaming between Robert and me, her future stretching bright before her. There, at the company's 20th anniversary gala, Emma at 25, already a rising star in the marketing department. Another at 30, being promoted to director of operations. My arm around her shoulders as we faced the applauding staff together. When had that pride turned to resentment? When had my encouragement begun to feel like a shadow she couldn't escape? I couldn't pinpoint the moment. Perhaps there wasn't one. Just a slow accumulation of perceived slights, unspoken expectations, comparisons she made in her own mind that I never intended. I picked up a framed photo from her nightstand. Emma at 10, sitting on Robert's shoulders at a baseball game, both of them laughing. Before ambition, before competition, before she saw me as something to overcome rather than someone to learn from. I miss who you were, I whispered to the photo. I miss my daughter. But sentimentality wouldn't win this fight. The morning of the hearing arrived, and I woke before dawn, my mind already racing through the day ahead. I chose my outfit carefully, a charcoal gray suit, crisp white blouse, minimal jewelry, professional, authoritative, understated. Not a woman clinging to power, but one who had earned it. James met me at my house, his car idling in the driveway as I locked my front door. Ready? He asked as I slid into the passenger seat. Ready? I confirmed, the leather portfolio containing all our evidence secure in my hands. Let's finish this. The courthouse was already buzzing when we arrived. I spotted several board members in the lobby, speaking in hushed tones. Noah Parker stood by the water fountain, looking uncomfortable in what was clearly his best suit. Marcus Reed nodded to me solemnly from across the room. Michael Chen was speaking with the court clerk, reviewing documentation. And there, surrounded by a trio of expensive-looking lawyers, stood Emma. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that practically screamed youthful innovation, the perfect contrast to my traditional gray. Another calculated move. She glanced my way once, her expression impassive, then turned back to her legal team. James leaned close. Remember, let me do the talking unless directly addressed by the judge. Stay calm, stay focused. We have the facts on our side. I nodded, squeezing his arm in silent thanks. As we made our way toward the courtroom, I felt a hand on my elbow. I turned to find Eliza Donovan, our longest-serving board member and a woman who had known me since the company's earliest days. Sarah, she said quietly, whatever happens in there, I want you to know that some of us haven't forgotten who built this company, who sacrificed for it. She pressed something into my hand, a small silver pin in the shape of our original company logo, the one Robert had designed on our kitchen table 30 years ago. For luck, she whispered, then moved ahead into the courtroom. I pinned it to my lapel, a small declaration of identity among the storm of papers and legalese about to engulf me. Then, straightening my shoulders, I walked through the doors to fight for everything I'd built. The courtroom smelled like cold air and polished wood. I wore black, not for mourning, for focus, for message. Emma wore cream, classic, soft, safe. She was already seated with her lawyers when I walked in. I didn't look at her. Didn't need to. I could feel the tension. James leaned in beside me. 3 board members in the gallery and your VP of operations just walked in. Good, I said. The judge entered. Gavel. Formalities. Then Emma's lawyer stood. What followed was exactly what I expected. A performance. Your Honor, the man began, this is not about animosity. It's about concern. My client Emma Lewis has observed a steady decline in her mother's capacity to lead a complex organization, emotional decision-making, inconsistent memory, erratic behavior during board discussions. He paused like it hurt to say. I sat still. Let the lies fill the air. Ms. Lewis has expressed admiration for her mother's legacy, but legacy is not leadership. Emma took the stand next. She looked at the judge with big, controlled eyes, practiced vulnerability. I love my mother, she said softly, but she's not the same. She cries in meetings. She forgets key dates. She's made financial decisions based on personal attachments, not company health. Lies, but told well. She looked toward the gallery, eyes glassy. This has been the hardest decision of my life, she said, but I had to choose what was right for the company. For a moment, I watched heads nod. Just a few. Then James stood. No dramatics, no monologue, just folders. Your Honor, he said calmly, we'll be entering into evidence a complete record of Sarah Lewis's medical evaluations from the last 18 months, all cleared by 2 specialists. No signs of cognitive decline. He placed the first folder on the bench. Next, a full audit trail of executive decisions made under her direction, including 3 consecutive years of revenue growth, client retention, and market expansion, all benchmarked against industry trends. Another folder. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. And finally, he said, sliding over the last binder, evidence that the petitioner, Ms. Emma Lewis, utilized company funds to retain legal services for this case. Services she submitted as corporate consulting in direct violation of her fiduciary duty. Silence, the kind that shifts an entire room. The judge flipped open the folder. Page after page of transfers, line items, digital signatures. James didn't look at Emma. He didn't have to. More evidence available upon request, he said, then sat down. Emma's lawyer fumbled, tried to object. Judge overruled, and I sat there, back straight, hands folded. Because this wasn't about pride, it was about truth. And finally, everyone in that room was seeing it. The next 10 minutes in the courtroom weren't loud or dramatic. They didn't need to be. James opened the binder labeled Exhibit C, turning each page with the deliberate precision of someone handling evidence rather than paper. Here, he said, placing the first document on the projector screen for the judge, is the original invoice submitted by Ms. Emma Lewis for legal consulting, coded under General Strategy. Click. And here is the same invoice paid directly to the law firm currently representing her in this case. Click. He didn't rush. He allowed each document to remain visible long enough for its implications to sink in. Here is the wire transfer and the matching charge to the corporate account. Click. Here is the vendor registration listing the firm under Ms. Lewis's personal contact information. Click. Every transaction was backed by dates, bank statements, IP login records, and Emma's digital authorization. She hadn't just misused funds. She had used the company's own money to finance her attack against me. The judge leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral. In your expert opinion, Mr. Harris, he said to James, does this represent a conflict of interest? More than that, Your Honor, James replied smoothly. It represents fraud. No dramatic gasps from the gallery, just a heavy stillness that spoke volumes. Next, James presented the staff emails, the promises of bonuses, the subtle pressure, the loyalty tests Emma had conducted. He projected one particularly damning email onto the screen, the one Emma had sent late at night, thinking it would never reach me. Once I'm officially in charge, you'll be compensated for your discretion. Support me now, and we all move forward together. The board members in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. One crossed his arms defensively. Another shook his head in disbelief. Emma's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is taken out of context. James remained unruffled. "We can supply the full threads, all 16 of them, if Your Honor wishes to see the complete context." The judge turned his attention to Emma. "Did you offer financial incentives to staff members for supporting your petition?" Emma opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her carefully constructed confidence had evaporated. She glanced toward the gallery, searching for friendly faces among those she had thought were allies. No one returned her gaze. I maintained my composure. No triumphant smirks, no visible reaction. I simply observed as the carefully crafted persona she had spent months perfecting the poised successor. The dutiful daughter, the visionary leader disintegrated under the weight of documented facts. I no longer needed to convince anyone of anything. The evidence was doing that for me. Marcus Reed was called to testify next. He approached the stand with the measured steps of someone who counted breaths the same way he counted figures precisely. Methodically. After being sworn in, he produced the falsified financial projections Emma had created. "These were presented to me as the official figures to be shared with the board," he explained, voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. "When I questioned their accuracy, Ms. Emma Lewis informed me that her mother was no longer capable of understanding complex financial data and that I should report directly to her moving forward." Emma's attorney jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay." "No," Marcus replied calmly, reaching into his jacket pocket. "It's recorded." He had activated his phone's recording function during their meeting, capturing Emma's exact words: dismissive, condescending, calculating. Her voice filled the courtroom. "Mom's losing her grip on the financials. We need to protect her from herself. Just run these numbers instead, they're more realistic. The board needs to see that the company's declining under her leadership." Emma's face drained of color. Her attorney leaned close, whispering urgently in her ear. Next came Noah Parker, visibly nervous but determined. He methodically walked the court through the trail of suspicious payments, consulting fees to shell companies, marketing expenses with no deliverables, legal costs disguised as operational expenses. With each example, he referenced specific transaction numbers, dates, authorization codes, the meticulous documentation of a born accountant. "And who authorized these payments?" James asked. "Ms. Emma Lewis, in all cases," Noah replied, carefully avoiding Emma's gaze. "Some required dual authorization, but for those instances, the second authorizer was Thomas Wilkins, who reports directly to Miss Lewis." Thomas Wilkins, Emma's loyal deputy. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat near the back of the gallery, suddenly finding the floor pattern fascinating. Michael Chen took the stand next, playing the recording from my final confrontation with Emma. Her voice, cold and determined, filled the courtroom. "Business is business. Mom, may the best woman win." The judge turned the last page of evidence slowly. He didn't speak immediately. He simply studied Emma for an uncomfortably long moment. Then he delivered the sentence that shattered her remaining composure. "So, Ms. Lewis," he said, voice calm but penetrating, "you accuse your mother of mental incompetence while simultaneously using her company's money to finance the case against her." Emma froze. No prepared rebuttal, no practiced line, just silence as the question hung in the air. She glanced desperately at her attorney, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "I didn't handle the billing directly." The judge cut her off. "The documentation indicates otherwise. You authorized these payments. You signed these expense reports. You wrote these emails." Emma blinked rapidly. "It was necessary legal counsel for a personal petition." The judge interrupted, eyebrow raised. "Against the woman who is still legally in charge of the business." The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting could have been. Behind me, someone shifted in their seat. I didn't need to turn to know it was one of the board members, the same ones who had been swayed by Emma's charm, her youth, her polished messaging. Now they were witnessing her facade crumble. The judge leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Your mother's cognitive evaluations are immaculate. Her leadership record is exemplary. Her documentation is meticulous." He closed the binder with finality. "And the only evidence of misconduct presented in this courtroom today is yours." Emma's shoulders sagged. It was the first time I had ever seen her look small, as if the illusion she had carefully maintained had finally collapsed under its own weight. James remained motionless beside me. He didn't need to add anything. The damage was complete quiet, surgical, irrefutable. The judge cleared his throat and addressed the clerk. "We'll take a brief recess before I issue my ruling." He stood. Emma stood as well. But it no longer mattered. The shift had already occurred. This hadn't been merely my defense. It had been her exposure. Emma hadn't just lost her bid to control the company, she had lost control of her carefully constructed narrative. We returned from recess to an altered atmosphere. Same physical courtroom, same wood paneling and uncomfortable benches. But the air had changed heavier, more final. Emma sat rigidly in her chair, gaze fixed straight ahead. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. She gave no response. The gallery had filled further during the break. More board members, several department heads, 2 major investors. Word had spread quickly. The judge wasted no time with preliminaries. He looked across the bench and spoke with measured clarity. "This petition lacks merit. The evidence provided by the respondent is clear, verified, and directly contradicts the claims made by the petitioner." His gaze shifted to Emma. "Furthermore, there exists sufficient basis to open a formal investigation into financial misconduct on the part of Ms. Emma Lewis. No theatrical flourishes, no pounding gavel, just the simple weight of facts." Emma's lips parted. "Your Honor." "I've heard enough," he said firmly. And just like that, the petition was dismissed. It was over. But Emma wasn't finished. As the courtroom began to clear, she rose from her seat, desperate now, script abandoned. She turned toward the gallery, her voice cracking with emotion. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she said, almost pleading. "I truly believed I was protecting the company." No one responded. Not a single face offered comfort or understanding. She took a step toward the judge's bench. I thought," the judge didn't look up from his notes. Emma's attorney gently tugged at her sleeve, silently urging her to leave with whatever dignity she might salvage. But instead, she turned to face me, and I will never forget what she said. "I only wanted what was best for Lewis Enterprises. Mom, I didn't want things to end this way." I stood perfectly still, for the first time since this ordeal began. I felt neither anger nor fear nor grief, only clarity. "You made certain they would," I said simply. And then I walked away. Behind me, I heard her begin to cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears of someone maintaining appearances. The raw, messy sobs of someone who has just watched their carefully constructed world collapse. She had spent months playing her assigned role, the composed daughter, the visionary leader, the misunderstood hero. Now, before everyone whose opinion mattered to her, that carefully crafted image lay in ruins at her feet. And I hadn't needed to destroy it myself. The truth had done that all on its own. The fallout came swiftly. By the time I arrived home that afternoon, James had already messaged me, "Board called emergency session tonight, 7 p.m. I hadn't requested this meeting. I didn't need to. Emma had made herself the central issue, and now the board had to address it. That evening, I took my place at the head of the conference table, the same chair I had occupied for over 2 decades. It had never felt more rightfully mine. The board members filed in silently, nodding respectfully as they took their seats. Emma arrived last. No makeup, no allies, just silence. Arthur Reynolds, the board chair, cleared his throat. "We've reviewed the court's decision and the supporting documentation." His voice was measured but unmistakably firm. "Emma, your actions were reckless, unethical, and in direct violation of several clauses in our executive agreement." She started to speak. He raised his hand, cutting her off. "You are removed from all company duties, effective immediately. The Finance Committee will be forwarding your records to legal for comprehensive review. If criminal charges are recommended." He paused, glancing briefly toward James. "We will cooperate fully with the authorities." Emma's face seemed to collapse in on itself, not dramatically, but with the quiet devastation of someone finally understanding that there would be no easy escape. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You thought I would surrender without resistance." She didn't look at me. She couldn't bring herself to meet my eyes. The board vote was unanimous. I signed the termination paperwork myself. Emma made no move to touch the documents. She simply sat there, blinking slowly, like someone waking in an unfamiliar room. When the formalities concluded, there was no celebration, no expressions of relief, no applause. Just the quiet, definitive sound of power returning to its rightful place. After everyone else departed, I remained seated at the table. The automatic lighting system dimmed on its programmed schedule. My shadow stretched across the polished surface, long and definite. For 3 decades, I had built this company with unwavering dedication. Every calculated risk, every sleepless night, every instinctive decision that proved correct, it had all been mine. And Emma had attempted to seize it all with a few signatures and practiced smiles. She had underestimated me. They all had. But I was still standing, still in control, and she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. 2 weeks later, I convened a full board meeting at precisely 900 a.m. Every seat was filled. They rose when I entered, not from pity, not from discomfort, but from genuine respect. I took my place at the head of the table. My posture conveyed no apology, my tone no unnecessary warmth. I had learned my lesson. "I won't waste your time with platitudes," I began. "This company is my legacy. It was not built on trends or personality or charm. It was built on discipline, strategy, and unwavering follow-through." No one moved. They were giving me their complete attention. I looked at each face around the table, all of them. The ones who had doubted, the ones who had observed from the sidelines, even those who had remained silent when Emma had whispered her poison. "From this day forward," I stated, "anyone who undermines that legacy will be dealt with accordingly, family or not." The silence continued, but it no longer felt tense or awkward. It felt appropriate. I could see understanding dawn in their expressions. They finally recognized who I truly was. Not the aging founder they had thought they could gently push aside. Not the maternal figure they could flatter and then replace when convenient. I was no longer accommodating. I was formidable. I didn't need to rebuild the company. I simply reclaimed it. After the meeting adjourned, no one lingered to make small talk. No more veiled implications or double meanings. Just quiet, newfound respect. As I walked down the corridor, I passed Emma's former office already emptied, nameplate removed. I didn't pause because I refused to look backward. Let her learn from the disaster she created. Let everyone witness how I restored order. Let them all remember I didn't merely survive betrayal. I emerged stronger because of it. But victory, even complete victory, leaves its wounds. That evening I found myself alone in my home, surrounded by silence and achievements that suddenly felt strangely hollow. I poured a glass of scotch, Robert's favorite, and settled into his old leather chair, surrounded by family photographs that now seemed like artifacts from a different lifetime. I had won, completely, irrevocably. Yet something fundamental had been broken that might never be repaired. Not the company Lewis Enterprises would continue to thrive under my leadership, but something I had once valued even more, the bond between mother and daughter. The phone rang, startling me from my reflections. I almost ignored it. It was nearly 10:30 p.m., and I had no desire for James's legal updates or board members' sudden demonstrations of loyalty. "Hello," I answered, expecting business. "Grandma." A small, hesitant voice. My breath caught. Lily Emma's daughter. 12 years old, brilliantly intelligent, with her mother's determination. But something gentler, too. Something that reminded me of Robert. "Are you okay?" she asked, genuine concern in her young voice. "Mom's crying all the time, and Dad said I shouldn't call you. But I wanted to make sure." My heart tightened painfully. In the midst of battle. I hadn't considered how this would affect Lily, caught between warring adults, trying to make sense of familial betrayal too complex for a child to comprehend. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I assured her gently. "These are grown-up problems. Nothing for you to worry about. But Mom said she can't come to work anymore. She said you're really angry with her." How could I possibly explain to a child that her mother had attempted to legally erase me, that she had misappropriated company funds to finance her betrayal, that she had planned to sell the business I'd built from nothing to the highest bidder? Your mom and I had a very serious disagreement about the company, I said carefully. Sometimes adults disagree about important things. Can't you fix it? The beautiful simplicity of her question nearly broke me. In Lily's world, adults possess the power to repair anything if they simply tried hard enough. Some things need time to heal, Lily, but I want you to understand something very important. I paused, ensuring my voice remained steady. No matter what happens between your mom and me, you will always be my granddaughter. Nothing changes that. Not ever. Silence answered me, then a small sniffle. I miss you, she admitted. Mom won't let me come over, but I miss our Saturday mornings. Our Saturday mornings, our standing ritual when I would pick her up for breakfast at her favorite diner, followed by browsing at the bookstore where she could select anything that caught her interest. Emma had apparently ended those too. I miss them too, I confessed. More than you can imagine. Can I still call you sometimes? Even if Mom doesn't know? I hesitated. As tempting as it would be to maintain this secret connection, to win Lily's loyalty as Emma had attempted to win my employees, I recognized it wouldn't be right. It would place Lily in an impossible position, force her to lie, to choose sides. You can always call me, I assured her. But Lily, tell your mom you called. Don't keep secrets about this. That only makes things more difficult in the long run. But what if she gets mad? Then we'll face that together. The truth is always better than hiding, even when it's uncomfortable. After we disconnected, I sat motionless for a long time, contemplating the lessons I had taught Emma and those I had failed to impart. I'd shown her how to build a business, how to lead, how to succeed. But somewhere along the way, I hadn't adequately demonstrated the crucial difference between ambition and greed, between success and dominance. The following morning, I called Noah Parker to my office. Noah, I said when he arrived, carrying himself with noticeably more confidence than he had shown just weeks earlier. I'd like to discuss a promotion with you. His eyes widened. What sort of promotion? I'm creating a new position, Director of Financial Compliance. You would report directly to me, with authority to review and flag any questionable transactions. After recent events, we clearly need stronger oversight. I'm honored, he stammered, but I'm relatively junior for a directorship. You demonstrated integrity when it mattered most, I said simply. That's rarer than experience. The technical skills you can acquire through training. Later that day, I met with Marcus Reed to implement a complete overhaul of our financial approval systems. No more single signature authorizations for any amount. No more vague vendor descriptions. No more expenses buried under generic categories. We need to be absolutely bulletproof, I told him. Not just against external threats, but internal ones as well. Completely agree, he said, then hesitated momentarily. Sarah, have you given any consideration to succession planning? Genuine succession planning. The question lingered in the air between us. After everything that had transpired, it seemed almost taboo, but it was necessary. I have, I acknowledged, but not as Emma envisioned. No predetermined heir apparent, no entitlement based on family connection. When I eventually step down, my replacement will be selected based on merit, not bloodline. He nodded, visible relief in his expression. The board will fully support that approach, especially after recent events. That evening, as I was preparing to leave, Michael Chen knocked on my office door. Sarah, do you have a moment? There's something you should know. I gestured him in. What is it? Emma has contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission. She's threatening to file a whistleblower complaint alleging long-term financial improprieties. My blood chilled. On what possible grounds we just proved conclusively in court that she was the one misappropriating funds? It's clearly a desperate move, he agreed. She's claiming there are offshore accounts, tax evasion schemes dating back years that you supposedly orchestrated, issues that wouldn't have emerged during the conservatorship hearing because they weren't directly relevant. That's completely false. We've never maintained offshore accounts. I know that. But investigations take time, create uncertainty. She's attempting to damage your reputation even if she can't control the company. I leaned back, suddenly exhausted. She really won't stop. Will she? Apparently not. But Sarah, we have 30 years of clean audits. We'll weather this. I simply wanted you to be prepared. After he departed, I sat in silence, absorbing this latest development. Emma was prepared to fabricate allegations, trigger federal investigations, potentially harm the company itself, all to strike back at me. This had transcended business. It had become a personal vendetta. I reached for the phone and called James. "I need to see my granddaughter," I said without preamble. "Emma is using her as a pawn, and I won't tolerate it." "We can pursue grandparent visitation rights through the court," he suggested after a moment. "But it's complicated, especially given the current situation." "I don't care about complications. Draft the paperwork. And James, find out what Emma truly wants. Everyone has a price. You're not considering paying her off." He sounded alarmed. "I'm considering ending this, one way or another." The following day, a courier arrived at my office with a sealed envelope. Inside was a formal settlement proposal from Emma's new attorney. In exchange for a severance package of $2 million and my agreement not to press charges for financial misconduct, she would abandon any plans to contact regulatory authorities and allow me regular visitation with Lily. She was using my granddaughter as leverage. It represented a new depth of manipulation, even for her. I took the document directly to James, who read it with increasing disgust. "This is essentially extortion," he said flatly. "We should present this to the judge immediately and subject Lily to courtroom proceedings." I shook my head. "No, there's a better approach." I drafted my counteroffer. Emma would receive 6 months' salary as severance, the standard package for any terminated executive. She would sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement and a non-disparagement clause that included penalties for violations. In return, I would not pursue criminal charges for her financial misconduct, and we would establish a formal visitation schedule for Lily, including the reinstatement of our Saturday traditions. "And if she rejects these terms," James asked, "then we proceed with full legal force," I said simply, "and I will win that battle too." 3 days later, Emma accepted my terms, not graciously, not willingly, but faced with the alternative of criminal charges and financial devastation. She signed the agreement. Our lawyers handled all communication. We did not meet face to face. That Saturday, I pulled into Emma's driveway to pick up Lily for our first visit since the confrontation. I had expected to wait in the car, for Lily to be sent out alone. Instead, Emma herself opened the front door and walked my granddaughter to the car. She looked markedly different, thinner, less polished, something subdued in her demeanor. Lily climbed into my car, chattering excitedly about the books she wanted to show me. "I'll have her back by 4 o'clock, I said to Emma through the open window. She nodded, then seemed to struggle internally before speaking. "The settlement wasn't what I wanted." "No," I agreed calmly. "It was what you deserved." She flinched slightly at my words. "Mom, Not now. Emma, not here." I glanced meaningfully toward the back seat where Lily was happily organizing her backpack. "We'll have our conversation another time." She stepped back, and I drove away, watching her diminishing figure in my rearview mirror, the daughter who had tried to destroy me, standing alone on her carefully landscaped lawn. "Where are we going first?" Lily asked excitedly. "Pancakes books. You said we could do anything I wanted." I smiled at her in the mirror, this innocent caught between adult conflicts. "Anywhere you choose, sweetheart, we have the whole day." As we drove to her favorite breakfast spot, I contemplated Emma, forgiveness, and the complex road ahead. There would be no quick reconciliation, no tearful reunion. Trust, once shattered, resists simple repairs. But there might, eventually, be understanding. Not now. Perhaps not for years. For the present, I had my company secure in my hands. I had my granddaughter's small fingers wrapped around mine. I had survived not just the betrayal, but the reckoning that followed. And I had discovered something essential about myself, something Emma never fully comprehended. My strength didn't derive from stubbornness or clinging to power. It came from knowing my own worth. And no one, not even my own daughter, would ever make me doubt that again. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below.